to hello, my friends. It's Bradley J and the Bradley J Show, and I'm super pleased to bring to the table here my longtime friend and not, I guess, a little bit of a colleague, Mike Nikitas. I met Mike in the University of New Hampshire, and since that time, he's been a broadcaster, like from '81 to 2017, in San Francisco's Bay Area, Colorado, Indiana, Massachusetts, NECN. You probably know him from NECN. And he appeared on GBH TV's Beat the Press, a Media Watch show. And since that show ended, he's been a guest host on Beat the Press podcast. And he runs Nikitas Communications. He coaches clients in media engagement, teaches them how to be effective communicators in the media, public speaking, and he MCs and produces public events. He's a busy dude. He teaches media skills at two grad schools, UNH Carsey School, Public Policy, and Brandeis Heller School of Management, MBA for Physicians. I thought I was busy, but that's nothing compared to you. Hello, Mike Nikitas.
Hello, Brad. Thanks for that long intro. You got the cliff notes of the bio, so I really appreciate that. And I do remember fondly, we both started at WUNH Radio in Durham, New Hampshire back in 1979, and I was in news, and you did the music, and I remember that well.
That's right. The WUNH, the free waves, which it was probably still cranking out the free waves. And you went away for a long time, and then I see you on NECN, and we connected a couple times. But now we go up to New Hampshire and go on these really cool walks and talk about stuff that's going on. And I thought, this is crazy that you're not on the program, so now you are on the program. And since you were a news expert, I need to address two things. Well, one thing, news, but in two ways. One, how has the news changed from when you and I were kids? We would watch Walter Cronkite, and everybody wanted the facts. They watched to see what was real. For example, the Vietnam War. The generals lied to us, but when Walter Cronkite said it wasn't going well, the president said, "Oh my God, we lost Cronkite. That's over." Now, facts just aren't even a thing. Can you explain? Well, I kind of explained how it's changed, but you can fill that in. And then the why. Why has this happened?
Well, boy, we only have a 20-minute podcast or 25-minute talk here, Brad. We could be talking for days, hours about that one. Yep. Let's remember, you mentioned Walter Cronkite. When Walter Cronkite went to Vietnam, he came back and he did an editorial. It was an editorial, and at that time, people didn't do that kind of thing on TV, but he did the editorial, basically, as you said, saying the Vietnam War was unwinnable. And when he did that, it was after that. Apparently, Johnson didn't actually see it, but he saw it later and said that if I've lost Walter Cronkite, I've lost Middle America, and I've lost Vietnam. So yes, but that was an editorial. It wasn't just the facts. It was
all right. Fair enough.
Opinion. So to say, I think that Walter Cronkite, he was called the most trusted man in America, and he was, fact-based more so than we see now. As far as cable news goes, I would argue that the three major networks in their half-hour newscasts still generally play it down the middle and are fact-based. Cable news, I think, is a completely different animal. And I think that, back when I started in news, we would sit around and we would say in the morning, what do people need to know? And now, and I think this changed with Roger Ailes, the late former head of Fox News in the 90s, what do people want to know? And let's give them what they want to hear. They used to call that, it was in psychology, one of the five biases, confirmation bias. You tend to seek out sources of information that confirm your own bias. And I think that Roger Ailes made, Fox News out of that. He gave people what they wanted to hear. And now, that's not to say other people don't do that, but I think that in a profit-driven environment, which we are in the United States of America, media is capitalism, and you want to make money. And if you want more eyeballs, and Fox has the most eyeballs, you got to do that. And I think if you look at just recently, there was an article, a profile in the New York Times just within the last week of Suzanne Scott. I don't know if you know who she is, but she's now the CEO of Fox News. And I pulled a quote because I thought it might be interesting. From that story, and it says, since she took over the top job at Fox in 2018, her colleagues say she's managed from behind the scenes with a simple mantra: respect Fox's audience. Now that to me tells you all you need to know. Often that involves sparing conservative viewers what they don't want to hear, even when that means ignoring one of the biggest stories of the year. So that to me kind of encapsulates what is going on with Fox. I think the same thing goes on at MSNBC on the left. I think to a lesser degree, they're trying to change things. The new head of CNN, Chris Licht, is trying to be more down the middle. He's trying. But I think in cable news, that's what you're seeing, because eyeballs, anybody who tells you anything different, eyeballs are what it's all about. We got to make money. The more people watch, the more we can charge for advertising. And that's how you are successful.
There's this notion that some of these stations, well, Fox, are ideologically driven. But that's not true, right?
Well, I would say that that they are both. They are profit driven first, and I think that they are to some degree in terms of the people they hire are ideologically driven. I think that Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, and Tucker Carlson are ideologically driven, and I could say the same for some people who work at MSNBC. I think to some degree they are, quote unquote, true believers, but I think also they know what makes them popular. Like Rush Limbaugh, they are show people, and they know what the audience wants, and they play to that. So, and I think they have huge egos, like most people in TV news. And I think that it all combines into a perfect storm of less fact-based news and more opinion-driven news.
So at the anchor level, okay, ideological, but the people who hire the anchors, not so much. They know.
No, I think I would, argue. I have not had a chance to watch the new Rupert Murdoch series on CNN. Have you had a chance to see that?
No.
No. I think to some degree it's well known that Rupert Murdoch is ideologically driven. He is more conservative. He's the owner of Fox News. So I think that is going on. I think that Suzanne Scott, I don't know her, obviously. I did meet Roger Ailes once. He offered me a job, which I turned down. So I do think that there is some ideology, but I think, again, it's all about making money and giving people what they want to hear as opposed to what they need to hear. And I think they are giving what they need to hear to some degree, but not as much today as what they want to hear.
Well, has what people want to hear changed? Seems as though they used to want to hear the facts as accurately as possible. That used to be the thing. We get the facts. We're not going to be wrong. We're going to be first. We're going to have the facts. But now, it doesn't seem as though people want the facts as much. Am I wrong on that?
Well, it depends on who you talk to, Brad. I think that there are many people who, and I think there's a hue and cry for just the facts. And I think that I've heard this literally dozens of times over the years when I used to work at NECN, which was more down the middle. And I think local news tends to be more fact-based and less opinion-driven. But people would say, why can't people be like you were? I really like watching you because you just give me the facts. And so I think that there are opportunities for that. But again, I think if there are many people in our very polarized world, and I think there are a lot of reasons for that, politically mainly, but I think that there are many people who think the facts are the things that they agree with. And we see that all the time. So what are objective facts? It gets down to that. I mean, we've heard the phrase, an alternative set of facts, right? We heard that from, what's her name, with the blonde hair that used to work for Trump. I'm forgetting her name now, but she was the one who said
Kellyanne
Conway. Thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot her name. And I love watching her husband with the long hair on CNN now, right? So
that's an interesting.
Came up with that alternative set of facts, and how I mean, for any of us that I don't know how you can have an alternative set of facts. You can have a different way of looking at the world, but you can't. Facts are facts are facts, and they're stubborn things. So I don't know how you can have that, but I do think that there's a lot of people now who think that facts are what they agree with, and that's what we're talking about: confirmation bias.
The purpose of the news used to be that if you get the facts, then you know then you have this information on which you can base decisions. How should I invest my money? Is it a good time to buy a house? Is my street dangerous? but now you don't get accurate information with which to make these decisions. The value of the news was I need the information so I can make decisions about my life and my community. And now you don't get that as much.
Well,
Oh, no, let me change
yeah,
that. People
yeah.
don't seem to want that information. They want false information that makes them feel good, but it's not giving them an accurate picture of the world, and therefore they're making bad decisions. For example, charging up to the Capitol, bad decision based on non facts.
And I think we're talking about maybe a lot of different things here. Deciding whether to storm the Capitol and whether or not it's a good time to buy a house because interest rates are 3.25 as opposed to 6.25 or whatever. I mean, I think there's a lot of information out there to make that you can get. We have more information than ever before, right? In our lifetimes, Brad, think about it. We came from a time when there were 3 network newscasts and the papers came out in the morning and maybe in the afternoon, and and everybody read a newspaper and we listened to radio a little bit. I mean, think about all the information. Think about how much you can get from scrolling for 15 minutes. Think of how plugged in we are to our phones. Think about how much crap there is online that poses as news, But I think if you're discerning and you think about where you want to go, what I think generally are the credible sources of news.
Okay.
And start going for those, and it's not, if you want news to decide your life, I don't think it's on cable news at night.
Okay.
Or in the mornings.
So
Generally,
really, you're putting the blame on.
And it has to be more finely tuned now than in any time of the last 50 years.
So you're blaming the consumer to a large degree. So if you want the news, it's there, but if you don't get it, it's your choices and what you watch. It's your own fault, right?
I'm not going to say it's your own fault, but I think that we all have personal responsibility. I'm kind of old-fashioned in this way. I think we all have personal responsibility to seek out credible sources of information and to think about what you're hearing. We've got this virus and disease of people believing in conspiracy theories now. So start thinking about what you're hearing. Does it really make sense that Hillary Clinton's part of a child, abuse ring operating out of a pizza shop? Is QAnon real? I mean, is JFK Jr. going to appear in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd? There were people. There were like 300 people that went there, and then stayed there last year. After we've seen this kind of stuff, right? And I think that there's always going to be, to some degree, a number of people who don't understand the world, no matter how complex it is or how simple it is, and need to find their own ways to explain it. And they fall into conspiracy theories as a result. And they're gullible. They're just plain gullible. Let's be honest, at least in my mind. I think that we just all have to, develop a greater sense of what is right and what is wrong and what is real and what is not, and to think about it and to search out those sources of information. I know maybe I'm just preaching to the choir, and maybe I'm just, gullible myself and not believing that people can't do that.
So the question: the folks who stormed the Capitol with the intent of overthrowing the government,
right?
Whose fault is that? Is it is that? And I know it seems like you don't want to assign blame. I'm a big blame assigner. Like they went there to do this based on false information. How do you assign the blame there? The givers of the false information, or those who chose that information?
Well, I can't assign specific one-sided blame. I think the world is more gray than that, and I think there's plenty of blame to go around in that particular event. I would blame Donald Trump. I would blame the people around him. He is the president of the United States, or was the president of the United States. His bully pulpit is bigger and stronger than anybody else's in this country. So his megaphone, which was already amplified by his use of Twitter and then other online websites and now Truth Social, was enormous. And he told people what they wanted to hear. And then I think the people who went there and also, stormed the Capitol with the help and support of all these various groups, whether it be Proud Boys or the other. There's two or three other groups, and then themselves. Why did you believe this? How did you believe this? How many of them believed that just because the president said this, it was accurate, and didn't do any more research on their own, or discounted the research, or believed that the president, the fears that they had about their own lives being changed or taken away from them was somehow at stake in this. And I think all of those things came together in a perfect storm that's still raging right now. You saw, who was it recently? Tommy Tuberville, the senator from, what is it? The guy who used to coach football, Alabama. And is it Alabama?
I don't know.
Okay, well, the senator. And he gave a speech a week ago where he said, reparations, they're coming to take away what you have, at his speech in front of a group. And that to me is, it tells people that there's something amiss and somebody's taking away something from you. And I think that that's a very fundamental fear in America right now. And that's in part what's fueling things like January 6th.
Okay, next step. No, the next factor is cable news is on 24 hours, and there simply aren't that many facts to give you new facts every, to have it just be fact-based. You're filling all that time, you got to stick opinion in between. So how much does the 24-hour news cycle contribute to the change in the direction of the news, fact versus opinion?
Well, I think that it does right now, especially in a competitive environment, does create an environment, a space where there is more likelihood of opinion being injected. But remember, there are other things that are, point to a small example, lowly NECN. We were 24-hour news, and we weren't on the air in the overnight hours from midnight to 5. But we still had a lot of time to fill. And you know what? We did it with 12-minute pieces. I was in Canada recently. I watched the CBC. They had 7 to 9 minute segments, and they were all fact-based. They weren't,
So it's possible. So it's not.
I think it's completely possible. I think
Okay, good.
It's possible. But, again, in a competitive, news, capitalist society where media is about making money, you're going to want to give people what they want to hear because you need more viewers. And to me, it boils down to that. Okay.
How much of the problem is actually what's going on right now? I'm getting comments from, I won't even post it because I'm not going to give that person oxygen. I'll just say that included in the comment that I'm getting right now says, we know. It says January 6th was orchestrated by the FBI. We know this because rioters were undercover FBI agents. It's all on video. How much of the misinformation is the result of unvetted sources you get like that on social media? Is it irresponsible to get any news online?
Of course not. I think there are plenty of credible sources. That person, I don't know who they are, but that person has not looked at facts. I don't know where he or she is getting their information about them all being undercover FBI agents. But it's a bunch of baloney, and we all know it. And how many FBI agents have been arrested? How many people have been arrested that later turned out to be FBI agents? I mean, please.
I know. So which brings me to ask, or maybe bring up the idea that a lot of the news sources are from people who don't believe it, but have made being contrarian, like flat earther type of people, their hobby. You probably interviewed flat earthers, and they don't believe it, but that this is their identity. I have all the arguments. I've read all the books. My identity is that I'm just crazy. I'm wild. I'm out there. I have this alternative view. That's me. It keeps me from being a nobody. It makes me into a somebody. The lies are a tool for me to become somebody. Yet, thousands of people take it as gospel because now you have unvetted news sources online. And at least back in the day of Cronkite, you had to pass certain bars to get access to the microphone Now every idiot has a voice. I will maintain, and this sound, people will go, oh no, that can't be. Not everyone deserves a voice. Now, but everyone
Well,
has a voice.
everybody does, right? The democratization of the world through the internet, right? Everybody's got a place. You know, I don't know what to say. Just, you know, Twitter's become a cesspool. One of the things that kills me is the number of accounts that, you know, people don't identify themselves. One of the things that Elon Musk, who I'm not a fan of, said when he tried to pull out the sale was that 80% of the accounts on Twitter were really just burner accounts or of some sort of an account of somebody posing to be somebody else. There are tons of trolls out there. If you believe everything or even part of what you read on Twitter or Parler, which I guess, you know, Ye wants to buy now, right? Kanye West, it's down to, what is it? It's down to 29,000 users. Or if you believe the things you read on 8chan or 4chan or wherever, you know, again, you're gullible. And I'm sorry to say that, but you're not thinking about, you're not using your brain. You're not thinking about all the facts. You're not looking at things and weighing what is possible, what is not possible. You believe in conspiracies because you can't understand the world and you've got to come up with some framework to understand it. And you're afraid, all of those things. And I'm sorry to be judgmental, but that's just the way I see it.
Being judgmental is okay.
I hate to be. I'm a journalist.
Being judgmental is an ability that gave humans from, you know, early on. It's one of their tools for survival and one of the tools that allowed them to become as effective as they are. Here's a big question: should news give oxygen to Trump and Kanye West when they're spouting obvious lies? They do it all the time. They give these lies oxygen. They take up time where that could be used for something else. Should they say, you know, we have to draw the line? He's not the president anymore. Kanye West is not the president, even close, hopefully. We're not going to do this, yet they continue to do it. Should they?
Well, that's a great question. I would put them in two different camps. I would agree with you. No oxygen for Kanye West. Let him buy his own, you know, social media website or platform. As far as Donald Trump goes, I think that the news media still has an obligation to cover him, perhaps more sparingly. And I think that's been happening. But I think that we have a huge obligation to cover him because he is the former president of the United States. He still has a voice. He is right now, we're following what's going. Will this man, you know, can you, as a former president, can you allegedly break the law on, you know, on several different levels? Will he be prosecuted? What is the evidence against him? I think that, you know, we have to be covering him. I think not covering him is just an abrogation of our duties as journalists and as of, you know, Americans.
All right. What would be your answer to, what would be your method to improve the situation, to make the news more reliable as far as facts go? How would you fix it?
Fix it? I don't know, Brad. I can't fix it. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I could fix it, right? I don't know.
What about this? What about this?
I think it starts again. I'm going to go back to it. Starts with personal responsibility. Start reading, watching, listening to sources that are trusted, and you know, you're just going to have to figure out which ones those are on your own. There are 2 or 3 websites out there that will show you, you know, the level of bias in a website or a news outlet. You know, don't believe everything you read or hear. If it sounds too, you know, good to be true, it probably is, or not too good to be true. You know.
All right. So it used to be most news came over entities which were licensed, and they had to do certain things to maintain that license. Now that's not the case because of the internet, etc. But it kind of could be. What if it became a law of the land that in order to call yourself news, like Truth in Advertising, if you're going to be called news, you have to supply a certain % of facts. And if it became determined that you had no interest in facts, you simply could not call yourself news. That way, at least maybe if anyone were interested, they could know that where they're getting their information is as high as you can get in the facts department. Is there any way to legislate truth or a
No,
it's
no.
a legislative place to go to get more truth, or a more refined, a pharmaceutical strength truth?
In my judgment, practically speaking, the answer is no. I don't think you can legislate that. We used to have, what was it, the equal time provision. That went out
Yep,
in the 19
that's
early
right.
80s with Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was the one who did away with that under his presidency, his first term, I believe. I don't think there's any way in this country right now that you could do something like that, because I think that there would be way too many people who thought the facts, the things that were facts, they wouldn't trust whoever was the arbiter of those facts. They
Okay,
just wouldn't. And that would be, I think, a major roadblock. It's a
I
wonderful
suppose.
thing. It sounds great. I think that I would love it if there was a member of the House who would, or the Senate, that would introduce a bill like that. The devil would be in the details. Who's the one who's going to decide these things? And people don't even trust Wikipedia anymore. They don't trust Snopes anymore. And, trusting the government, it wouldn't, I don't
All
think
right.
would happen. That would be, just practically speaking, Brad. It sounds wonderful. I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it. If
Okay.
I were king of the world, sure.
Okay. What do you think is going to happen? Oh, no, one more question. The legislators, people who are in a position to have an impact on the next election, people in power, many of them still are election deniers. Do you think they believe it? Do you think they believe the election was stolen, or do you think they say that because they're kissing the butt of their core, or what do you think as far as the level of belief they have in what they say about the election?
Well, to me, it's one of the most distressing and saddening parts of our discourse right now in our politics, is that there is still a certain number of people serving and running right now who believe that the election was stolen, and that somehow Joe Biden didn't win and somehow Donald Trump didn't lose. So it's stunning to me. I understand it, but it's still stunning to me that there are people who believe that. What was wait a minute, what was the actual question, Brad?
How, to what degree do the people who are election deniers, especially the people in government, believe it or just say it?
Oh, yeah. No, I yes. Okay. So, given what I just said, I think if they're running for office or in office and running for reelection, I think to some degree many of them do believe it. I believe their rhetoric. I think that there is true belief, but I also think many of them are doing it just to get votes and to get reelected, because they know they have a base that will vote for them if they say those kinds of things. I mean, politicians are pretty smart people, and they do polls and they find out what the six most popular issues are in their district, and they fashion talking points based on those six things. And if election denying is one of them, then that will be something that they will run on and talk about. Right now we have two candidates in New Hampshire who either have denied or still deny that Joe Biden won the election.
As you can see, we're speaking with Mike Nikitas. It's not like the old days where I needed to keep telling you who it is, because it says Mike Nikitas right up there, who is a person in the news business, and he teaches clients media skills, among other things. What do you teach them? What is the core of what you teach them, and how can people contact you if they have an organization that could use a little media skill instruction?
Yeah. First off, it's nikitascommunications.com, Nikitas communications.com. What I teach at the Carsey School of Public Policy, it's a great school, and so is the Brandeis Heller School. The Heller School is the only MBA program, as I know it, for doctors. And the Carsey School of Public Policy is for people who want to work in government. They want to work as a politician. They want to maybe be elected as a elected leader. They want to work for a senator. They want to work in policy in a government organization. And what I teach them is just how to understand media. If they have a message and they're going to have media interaction, how to get their message across so it's effective and it's truthful and it's real, and how they can further their own whatever it is, whether it's, I've worked with people, doctors who had to deal with the media during COVID. How do you get out real information and how do you not scare people? I've worked with a lot of people in public policy who are trying to forward, get traction for a public policy, whether
Right.
no matter what it is. And how do you get media interested in it? How do you use social media? And how do you get your message out there in the universe? And those are the kinds of things that we talk about.
So if, for example, if you were an organization and you were trying to get bike lanes put in your town and you were trying to move that agenda forward, you might give them some insight on how best to do that, how best
Sure.
that notion could get traction. So
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Nikitas Communications dot what? Nikitascommunications.com. Cool. Mike Nikitas, I know you got a lot going on. Really appreciate your time. Really, really appreciate it. Folks, can you share this? Because it's important. And I certainly will share it. And Mike, you're free to share it too.
Thank you, Brad. It was such a pleasure to talk to you, and I really enjoyed it, and we're going to have to go for another hike soon.
Okay. Have a good day. Bye. And thanks again. We'll be clear in like